Hi, in today's episode, we have Poornima Kulathu. Poornima is a banker and has over 20 years of experience in various lines of consumer banking. But what we love about Poornima is that she's an intersectional feminist, which she will explain to us about, and she speaks up against gender and caste-based oppression and discrimination. And that's how Poornima and me connected. She has a very strong voice on social media and writes on social issues wherever she gets a chance. She believes in opening up conversations around matters that are considered taboo and challenges the norm frequently. Poornima is very much my kind of a girl. Poornima has also authored a book called An Italian Encounter, which is a light, breezy read. And in her spare time, she writes poetry on matters close to her heart. So welcome, Poornima. And if you recall that we would like to talk about caste oppression in India. And then, of course, we're going to get down to understanding from you what you mean by intersectional feminism. And actually going back, it would be Manusmriti, who's widely regarded to be the most important and authoritative book on Hindu law. And it dates back to at least 1,000 years. The book acknowledges and justifies the caste system as the basis of order and regularity of society. It divides Hindus into four main categories: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and the Shudras. And many believe that the groups originated from Brahma, the Hindu god of creation. This is part and parcel of Hinduism and very much inherently in so many of us that we don't even realize sometimes how we are conditioned if you are a Brahmin and how you view society from that place of let's just say, a pedestal. So let me hear your story, Poornima.
Hi, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to come on your show. It's really exciting. I've heard you speak before, and I've listened to a few of your podcasts. So I'm looking forward to a nice, fun chat, and also, sharing opinions on I think what you and I both deem important: feminism and how to take the movement forward, and what's basically happening around us in our country, and how we can help by raising our voice. I think we can bring about a change. So thank you for explaining what the caste system in India is and the four varnas. So from a personal perspective, I would like to disclose my caste location because that's important in every conversation. I'm a Savarna, which means that I belong to one of these four castes, and all of these four are considered Savarna because they form a part of the Varna system, and the entire Varna system has left out a large population and not included them. They've not been included in the system at all, and this is the DBA community, which is the Dalit, Bahujan, and Adivasi community. So at the outset, why I would like to disclose my caste location is for the fact that if you're born into any of these four castes, then you come with a lot of privilege that you have earned over generations.
Yes.
And for many, this is a very difficult concept to grasp. And let me frankly say that I didn't know this myself until a few years ago, until I chanced upon a few groups on Facebook where these were being discussed. Then I realized that I was very interested to know what is the history behind all of this. And then I read Annihilation of Caste by Baba Saheb Ambedkar, and that kind of really, it was like a light bulb moment for me. So I find that the biggest problem today is that people think that if you don't talk about caste, then that's the way forward. If you don't talk about caste, that means you're not casteist. I think I would like to debunk that myth completely, because if you don't talk about it, it doesn't mean caste is not existing. It's not going to go away anytime soon. It's possibly never going to go away, as research has shown us. Caste-based atrocities continue to happen around us, and hence talking about caste is very, very important. I have a lot of people around me, my friends, who believe they are not casteist because they don't ask another person's caste. Now, you should not ask another person's caste because that is, I think that comes under an offense and under some section of the law. But the fact is that you have to open up conversations around this. So from a personal perspective, I would like to say that I'm a Savarna. I wouldn't really like to give away more than that because it doesn't matter. If you're part of the four, if you're part of the four Varnas, then you've accumulated a lot of generational privilege, which has come from the fact that your ancestors were possibly educated. You had access to a lot of material. You had social capital. You had cultural capital. Now, social capital is something that is it it means that you were accepted in society. You didn't have to hide. You weren't afraid of revealing who you were. You were not marginalized in any way. So, and these kind of things are very important to the fabric of a human being, because without any of these, you feel very marginalized. So that is where the entire theory comes from in a nutshell. So um, so that's kind of an introduction to this whole conversation. The fact that I have come with a lot of privilege, in the sense that I have had ancestors who were educated, and the fact that growing up, I didn't even feel the need of for anything, and the fact that I was given education. I lived a certain way. I had access to study material. I had access to people who would help me, direct me into what I needed and should be doing. All of this is very, very privileged. And if I am here, talking to you, and if I'm able to express myself, it is because of two things. One is feminism, and the other is that I belong to a certain community. Without acknowledging these two things, I don't think we can even take the discussion forward, because it is not for this privilege is not available to everybody, and it's very important to acknowledge that one is privileged. One hasn't come to these to this space, and they're not occupying this space because of quote unquote merit, but mostly because of generational wealth that has been accumulated in so many ways.
You're so right when you say this to me, Poornima, because you know what? I travel back, into my own childhood, and I too belong from a privileged, and I don't like to call myself or address myself with any of that, because that never played a role in my life. I would like to believe that. But yes, I still need to wash away so much inside me, because that's the way we were raised, in a joint family. I was not raised in a joint family. I was in a nuclear setup, but during our times, we spent holidays in our grandmother's home, and it was very Brahminical in its entire, in its whole approach. I mean, they looked down on. It was unspoken, but we knew that somebody who had a different surname and was not part of the Brahmin surname. I'm a Bengali, and they were very clear. They started small things were said and done, which became so integral to the entire way they functioned with others. So when you talk about Dalit, the Chamar, the community, or you talk about a Muslim, they were not allowed inside the kitchen. So in the house, even if you had house help, in my grandmother's house, not in my house, they will not allow somebody who's a Christian or a Muslim or somebody who's from the lower community to come and cook. Even today in a home, a Kshatriya, in one of my, relatives' home, a Kshatriya, a cousin of mine got married to a Kshatriya boy. Their children are not allowed to touch the kitchen utensils. So you're so right when you say that, what merit do they have to say that, I am superior than you? And this is so divisive. And I mean, and of course, so many people are not even willing to have a dialogue on this, because this is so political. This is so, and I don't want to dabble in politics. It's so easy to market fear. It is so easy to put in, people into an order where you can control. I think this is mainly control tactics that was done 1,000 years back, and that still continues, And, Brahmins actually have done so much of atrocities across generations in the past of marriage. They would marry multiple women if the girl didn't get married, and so that they would have the next child would be a Brahmin, and there would be a complete exchange of money between the father and the daughter, the father who has a daughter, and the Brahmin who would come in and marry. And this happened in Bengal, where I would like to believe that it is a progressive state, but it is, when you look back at the history, no, this has become such a huge part and parcel of the way we grew up. So I so agree with you when you say this to me. And talking about feminism, it would be lovely to know what you just explain to our listeners about intersectional feminism. What does that include?
Right. So on the first part, what you said happened in your grandparents' house or in your ancestors' house. It continues to happen, even today.
Yes.
It happens. Yes, it happens in my, within my circle of, friends and colleagues and stuff like that. So I have had these discussions, and I become rather, unpopular because I'm the one who's calling out people in discussions, and then they don't want to engage in these conversations. So I had an ex-colleague who I confronted because we were having a very heated exchange, and he was trying to project himself as a non-casteist person, and I asked him that does he have a domestic worker? He said yes. So I said, what does she do? Then it was revealed that she doesn't enter the kitchen. So I said, why not? He said, because my mother is there. So I said, okay. He said, look, I don't believe in it, but my mother does. Now, that is one point that I really want to make here. The fact that the older generation has certain beliefs, we are willing to cut them slack. Now, what are we doing when we are cutting them slack and saying, array, they are old, they are not going to understand? You are siding with the oppressor. And at what cost? You are willing to marginalize one person and say it is okay that you're being discriminated because my father or my mother or my sister or my uncle or somebody older in my family is not going to change their mindset. You are then complicit in this entire discrimination. You are as much an oppressor as anybody else. So please don't call yourself non-casteist if you're not going to stand up to the elders in your family and tell them that this is wrong and this can no longer happen. It's not easy. It's not easy, and many times it's a losing battle. You're not going to win that battle because possibly the person and I'll come to that in a bit. The older person is a patriarch, for example, who holds the reins of the household in his hand, or it's an older woman who holds the reins of the household in her hand. So it's not going to possibly win. But the fact is, you've got to raise your voice. You've got to speak about it because of two things. One, if you in your 30s or 40s are at an age when you believe that this is wrong, are still obeying these social orders, then you're complicit, like I already said. The other is you are invisibilizing the older generation by saying that they no longer matter. They are old, so forget about them. Now that's a problem in itself because these are contributing people of the society, right? So what if they're older? Aren't they casting their vote? Aren't they a part of the census? Aren't they living human beings? Everyone who's living, casting a vote. See, of course, and this is not a political debate, but if you're going to cast your vote, and you're going to cast your vote, with this inherent sense of bigotry in your mind and racial discrimination, casteist discrimination, then you know the kind of vote that's going to go, and we know the kind of government that we're going to elect. So these are all interlinked. The entire feminist stroke casteist stroke race, of course, race doesn't come into the picture in our country, but all of this is interlinked, and all of this ultimately will result in a structure, in a government that you have helped create. Then there's no point in us complaining. So I'll just dwell upon the age bit for a minute more.
It's a very interesting part for me because I really believe that just because you have gray hair and you have a gray beard and you're wearing glasses, you are not intelligent enough for me to listen to you.
Exactly.
Yes, I so agree with you. And just because you're an uncle or a grandfather, that doesn't mean that you are right in what you're saying. Absolutely bang on. Yes.
And we come, our society and our culture is such that you have got to obey elders,
yes.
right? It's
yes.
not just
obey
respect.
The elders.
Yes, respect. We're taught to obey. The word obey is such a large part of our vocabulary.
Children I need you to repeat that once again, Poornima, that children are taught to obey. They do not understand the word respect because we do not teach them respect.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's about obedience, and I have grown up listening then because I was a fairly
Yes,
disobedient child.
me
I was
too.
saying, yeah, I was told, obey, obey, obey. Now, possibly a child will have to obey till the age of 5, which itself is, up for conversation, because they don't understand. You have to say a yes, no to them kind of a thing. But my point is, we are adults here and we are dealing with older people, and we are, for some reason, have to obey the older generation, even if they are wrong. And the fact is, older people are very often wrong, as is any other human being, right? Just because they are older people doesn't make them right in everything that they do. And if you have to really bring about a change in society, then you have to also consider the older demographic in your discussions, as you do with with the younger with the younger population. And the biggest question I have here is, when you say old, what is that number? Is it 50? Is it 60? Is it 80? Because you can't really say who's old now. I'm 48 and I'm teased as a boomer in many conversations. I'm called old. Even my son says, okay, you're an older person. I don't feel I'm an
I
older
hear it all
person,
the
but
time also. Poornima,
but it's
that I'm an
okay.
older person and I don't feel old at all. But yes, you're so right. That age itself also, people are such an ageist society.
Yeah, and we happen to be a young country, right? I mean, our
Yes, we are a
demographic
young
is, it
country.
completely leans towards a younger population. So I understand,
Hmm.
but I can say this, and sorry that if it sounds like bragging, I can put a younger person to shame. Okay, in terms of my worldview. So that is something which it's fine. So my point is, you can't take away the fact that older people are continuing to be casteist in our society, and we are allowing them to get away because we believe they are old. They are old, but they're going to possibly live for another 20, 30 years, or whatever, be it another 50
And
years.
they will
And we are
continue the
going to
oppression.
continue the oppression, right?
I
We're going to,
agree.
yeah, and there's a cost to it. See,
It's a
it's,
huge
and
cost.
huge cost. And the fact, when
Yes.
we say it's okay that they're doing this, it clearly, I mean, there can't be a louder declaration of privilege in that. It's, you are allowing it to happen because it's not happening to you. It's not happening. You are not being marginalized. You are not being discriminated because your parent is discriminating somebody else. You are casting a blind eye to it because it's not happening to you. It's not affecting you at all. And we saw this happening in the rape of that little 9-year-old girl in the crematorium by the
Oh God,
Brahmin
yes.
priest and a ton of people. So I was enraged, and then we had a clubhouse room which we moderated. A bunch of us got together. We were talking about the apathy of the Savarnas, right? They're completely apathetic to these discussions. It is only the DBA community that keeps coming up and speaking up against. Is what is our responsibility? Our responsibility is to stand with them, to and lend them a support from the backs from the backstage, to know that we are with them, right? These atrocities are being committed on them by Savarna people, and if Savarnas aren't speaking up, they are not, because clearly it's not happening to them. And anyway, so that's a whole other thing on the caste based discrimination. So I did want to touch upon the age bit because it keeps coming up in conversations. And sorry, I'm not going to cut any older person slack, right? We don't have to be abusive or disrespectful or call them out rudely, but I think we must invest in conversations with them to tell them how things have changed, and it's no longer
I
that.
so agree with you, on this, Poornima, because I will narrate to you one incident that I have not spoken to anybody, I think, on this podcast. When I had gone to Kolkata many, many years back. And I obviously grew up, like you said, I grew up in a privileged setup of being a Brahmin. I kind of did not know what it is to be marginalized, what it feels. But of course, again, I grew up in a setup which did not really care. My father didn't wear the thread. There was not too much of discussions about all of this. Yes, my mother was particular about me marrying a Bengali Brahmin boy. Of course, I did all the opposite of whatever that she asked me to do. And I remember going into Kolkata, and there was this really, I think she was 80 years old, and she was a widow. And in Bengal, the widows are not allowed to wear colored clothes. They have to wear a white, very stark cotton sari. They shave their head off, their hair off, and they clip their hair out so that they're not desirable any longer. And I remember going into somebody's home, and it was, I don't think it was in Calcutta, but little in the outskirts. And typically, all of us, what we do, we are taught, you touch the feet of an elderly person, you bend down to touch the feet. And the minute I touched her feet, and she held my face and she said, "What's your name?" I said, "I am Mohua Bhattacharya," which was my maiden surname. She panicked. And she said, "No, you're a Brahmin. You cannot touch my feet because I'm not a Brahmin. I have to touch your feet back." I died with that. Believe me, Poornima, because,
Oh my
and
God,
she
that's
was
so
bent
terrible.
at 80, and because I'd grown up in Delhi. I had I had no clue, about casteism. I mean, we lived in this little bubble. Of course, we knew that, and we knew that we need to stand up for things that are wrong. But I didn't know how deep seated was this sort of discrimination that had entered her bone and her system. And that's something that has stayed back. And she said, you've given me you've done something that's so wrong, and I will bear this cross forever. And in Bengali, she said, "Eta amar pap hoye galo," which means that this is
Yeah,
something that I've sinned today, that I've allowed a Brahmin to touch my feet. And I came back very shaken and more convinced that, this is something that I will
yeah,
try to not, acknowledge. But of course, there are times where, the old beast does keep springing up in its strange ways. But yes, I'm trying to wash myself off from all of these things the older I grow. And I realize that eventually all this was so man-made. It has nothing to do with the human race. So tell
yeah.
me, yeah. So Poornima, tell me a little bit about the work that you do. You speak a lot on feminism, which is again a topic so close to my heart. And there are so many areas of work that we can
Yeah,
talk on. We can
right.
talk from marriage, we can talk from work, we can talk from motherhood to sex to everything. So I would, because
Right.
our podcast is about 35 to 40 minutes, you can
Sure.
choose any one topic that you feel is very close to your heart on feminism, and let's just discuss that.
Sure. So yes, so you start. You actually made a comment. You said I mean, you spoke about a woman's desirability in the last conversation you had, and that's so true. The whole problem is that women are considered to be desirable objects, and that's a double-edged sword in many ways. The fact is that a woman is desirable, and hence she must be shielded. She must be covered up, and then she must be protected. Because she then becomes this object of lust, which is very, 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 very scary for the male gender. And then this whole thing around that entire covering up and protection, all of that happens. And that is one of the very important reasons for the oppression on women and against women. So on feminism, I don't know if I was always a feminist, but I was always I was always rebellious, and
You were questioning.
I was always questioning the
Me
social
too.
order, and I
Yes.
was told that I shouldn't question. And then I
Yes.
remember one conversation where my mother told me that your husband will throw you out if you speak like this. So so those, of course, we have all grown up with these things. The facts. So what I will first talk about is intersectional feminism. So feminism has gone through different waves, right? And most of it has have been worldwide movements. And I particularly have a problem with women calling saying that they are not feminists, providing disclaimers urgently, hurriedly, saying, no, 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 but I'm not a feminist. So my question to them is, why aren't you a feminist? What has feminists taken away from the world that you want to delineate yourself from the word feminism? Right. So we are currently in the fourth wave of feminism, which started, I think, in 2012. My dates could be slightly off. The fourth wave of feminism is very interesting because one, it opens up online kind of protests and online kind of discourses and conversations, right? Because feminism movements have been predominantly about protests, revolutions, and disobeying the existing social order, which happened through various live demonstrations and stuff. So the fourth wave, then considers that it is possible to do this and to reach a larger number of people through online platforms. So that's great, but it's also limiting because not everyone has access to online, right?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
that is one thing. The other thing that intersectional feminism per se acknowledges now is that so one is you are a woman, and right now I will only talk about in binary terms, and I will explain why that is while opening up the conversation to non-binary terms. So you are a woman in the first place, and so you are an oppressed gender, and that is a bedrock of feminism, that a woman is oppressed, and I mean, and that's not up for conversation because we know women are oppressed.
Yes,
Now,
they
what
are.
happens? Yeah, what happens when there are other intersections of race, intersections of caste, intersections of religion, intersections of sexuality, gender? All of this happens. Then what happens to feminism? It ceases to be a unidimensional, a single straight road of conversation, right? Because there are intersections. So, for example, the way I perceive, feminism, or my interest in feminism from a personal perspective would be very different. For the reason that I'm a privileged. I enjoy two privileges, which is caste, and the other. Is I'm not able to remember why I said two. Okay, so I enjoy caste-based privilege. Now, what happens to a woman who doesn't enjoy caste-based privilege? Right? She's a Dalit woman. Is her struggle as in this movement the same as mine? Clearly not. Now you add to the Dalit woman, you add the fact that she's possibly a sex worker. Then what happens? Or the fact that she's homosexual, or that she's a trans woman, or that she's disabled. That's another thing. So what happens when different kinds of things are stacked up against you? How does that affect the
My God,
feminist
it's
movement, right?
yes, absolutely. My heart
So
bleeds,
yes,
Poornima,
so
even
the
thinking about it. Yeah.
exactly. So feminists in the past didn't consider these things. They were predominantly talking about women, right? Because at one point of time, women didn't have voting rights. Imagine,
Yes,
you couldn't vote. Yes,
absolutely.
you couldn't be seen out in public, you couldn't go to college, you couldn't work. So those things were important at that point of time, but right now it's important to open up the space and the field to other intersections. So intersectional feminism, in my opinion, because I haven't been a part of any other feminist movement, is I feel absolutely right and perfect, because you are not discriminating, or you are not marginalizing anybody who's oppressed, anybody. So this is so I will now come to the non-binary kind of discussion. So the fact is that you will have trans women who are having a problem, or trans men who are who have so far been excluded from these conversations, right? Because where do they fit in was what society kept asking them. So the fact is that feminism considers all genders, all oppressed genders, all castes, all communities, all races, all forms of ability. So you have different kind of people who inhabit the earth, right? And each of them are oppressed in different ways. So intersectional feminism tries to embrace all of them together and fights and speaks about all kinds of oppressive practices against everybody except the ones who are oppressing. And the ones who are oppressing, this again is also not up for conversation, at least in India, are the cis het Savarna men. Now, what is cis? Cis is the fact that you are assigned a gender at birth and you're comfortable with that gender. For example, I'm a cis het woman. I was assigned the gender of female at birth, and I'm comfortable with that. I consider my gender to be female. So there is no anomaly between what I was assigned at birth and what I am. So I'm cis. I'm also heterosexual. I'm not homosexual or any of the other kind of sexuality. So I'm a cis het person. The only thing is that I'm a woman and I'm oppressed. Now, what happens to a man? He is a cis heterosexual man who belongs.
What is cis? I don't think I've heard about this also.
CIS, cis.
Okay.
Cis is possibly the opposite of trans.
Okay.
So you have people who are assigned a certain gender at birth, right? They were
All right.
assigned a gender at
Yes,
birth
of
because
course,
of
yeah.
the sex organs, right?
Yes,
so a person
yes.
was assigned male at birth.
Mhm.
But as they grew, they realized that they weren't male, right? And gender we now know is very different from sex. Gender is a social construct. Gender is what
Absolutely.
you feel you're comfortable with. It has nothing to do with the sex organs you possess.
Correct.
So gender is very different. So the fact is that a baby is assigned the gender at birth as male, but as they grow older, they realize they are female, right? They feel female. So there is an anomaly there between society considering them as male and them considering themselves as female. So that is the opposite of cis. That's what So that makes up the trans population.
Okay.
So what is cis is, I'm speaking for myself because I wouldn't like to hazard a guess about you. I was assigned female at birth. I consider myself female. I'm comfortable. My gender is female. I feel female in my life. So I'm a cis person.
All right. So am I. I was.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Right. So it's politically incorrect these days now to assume a person's gender because people are gender fluid.
Yes.
And as conversations have opened up on gender fluidity, we now know that you can move through genders, right? You can be female, or you can be male, or you can be neither. You can be non-binary. So
Correct.
binary are the two genders that our society through thousands of years has believed that people can only be female or female. And hence, those who are not were ostracized and marginalized. And oh my God, the kind of atrocities that have been committed on trans people in all countries and all societies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So intersectional feminism encompasses trans people as well, right? There are a lot of things that the queer community goes through, and I'm really a disclaimer. I'm really not equipped to comment on the queer community because obviously I don't have lived experience. So all I know is that that they do face challenges, and it's up to feminism again, because who else? There is no other movement, right? So it's up to feminism to actually encompass everybody else into its movement and speak for all people who are being oppressed. So coming back to the male thing, so it's like a pyramid per se. The most oppressed, the slightly lesser oppressed, and stuff like that. So who's at the top? Who's the least oppressed, or the one who's possibly not oppressed at all? This is the cis heterosexual man. In the world, it's in the West, it's possibly a white man, as they would call it, right? In India, it would be a cis heterosexual oppressor caste or savarna man, right? And these are the people who are in positions of power, who are making decisions, who occupy all spaces, and which is why there is so much of there aren't enough spaces for feminists to speak up, and there is a lot of maligning that feminists are facing, because the cis het man per se doesn't understand the feminist movement, right? He doesn't understand
absolutely.
feminism.
They don't want to understand also.
It's the same thing. It doesn't affect him. It's just like a Savarna person who doesn't understand, the atrocities or the marginalization that Dalit people face.
Absolutely.
A cis-het Savarna man doesn't understand what this whole thing is about. So if you're on Clubhouse, you should hear the conversations which are happening. There was one room which talked about women empowerment. All the mods were male. Everybody on stage was male. And all the male were saying, women are empowered, women are safe, women are this, women are that. So
I think I was there in that room.
I just went in and said, you don't even have a single woman who's talking about this.
Exactly.
Ask a woman whether she feels safe. Ask the woman if she's empowered.
Exactly. I was abused
Yeah.
out of a room in one of these rooms
Yeah. I
because
have been.
I was abused out of the room because I spoke about a community in Madhya Pradesh where, again, they are a backward community, and they're young little girls from the age of 10 to 12. They are put into prostitution and they become the family earning members, and there are like truck drivers and all of them, and for 100 rupees they almost service about 10 customers sometimes in a day. And these are 10 to 12-year-old girls. And there's this boy who's trying very hard to eradicate this age old practice because they say that this is part of the entire, cultural caste culture of that community in Madhya Pradesh.
My
And
God.
so that still happens, and it doesn't form a part of the dialogue in India. Again, as much as we talk about women empowerment, nobody wants to address that at all.
Yeah, and I personally actually I have a problem with the word women empowerment, because what are you doing really? You are again placing the onus on women. You are saying empower, we will empower you, empower yourself, empower yourself. I don't understand why a woman has to be empowered. I will, for the simple reason that if you take away the pressure from her, the oppression and the oppression from her and the discrimination against her, she's already empowered. Stop placing the onus of women's growth on women's shoulders in the first place, because there is a force which is acting
Absolutely.
against them.
Yes. Say that
There
again.
is someone doing
Absolutely.
something here. It is not
Yes.
about women. It's not about, it's not an equal playing field where all opportunities are open and women are sitting quietly in a place and saying, disempowered. And that's not happening, right? There's a force which is acting against them by curtailing their avenues, by clipping their wings, by, policing where they go, what they do, what they wear, curtailing their growth in corporates. All of this is happening. So stop. The again. So we will be oppressed. Then we have to put in the work on ourselves. What are the men doing? What is this particular cishet Savarna man doing? And it's very interesting. I must tell you this, that as I speak to more and more people, I realize that people from marginalized communities, right, queer communities and DBA communities, the men speak up. The men are a lot more progressive. And I don't know, this is a personal opinion. I really feel that if a person has experienced oppression in some form, no, then they become more open, and they realize how oppressive oppression is per se, of all kinds of oppression, and they are against all forms of oppression. See, if you've been oppressed so much in your community per se, then you realize that women are being oppressed also, right? And all forms of oppression are wrong. But a cishet man has no oppression on him, possibly class oppression, right, in terms of economic privilege. But class again has mobility. You can be a person who, you can move from a have not place where you have been deprived of finances and economic privilege, and then you move up to a place where you have everything. So mobility is allowed. What happens in caste? There is no mobility allowed. What happens in of course, now gender and sexuality, there is mobility, but there also there is a lot of resistance to accepting people who are moving through sexualities, moving through genders. So we have to stop placing the onus for women empowerment on women. We have to really identify the problem. The problem here is that cishet men are controlling too much of power in this country, right? And in the world, they are in places of, they are holding high power, high positions in politics, which are making rules. They are holding high positions in judiciary, in academic institutions, in corporates. Everywhere you see the top is mostly a cishet man, right? And that person has experienced no marginalization of any sort, and his empathy, is sorry to say, is very, very low, really. And men per se, and the other problem is that men calling themselves feminists, doing one or two chores in your house really doesn't make you a feminist. I'm really,
I'm sorry, I have to laugh at
yeah,
that.
I have men who come say, "Oh, I'm a feminist, I'm a feminist." Okay, dude, what is it you do? I help my wife at home. First, my blood boils when I hear the word help. Why are you helping your wife? Help matlab kya? That means it is her job to do and you're assisting her. You're an intern. Isn't it your house? you're just doing the job in your house. You're washing vessels, you're sweeping, you're doing stuff in your house. You're not helping anybody. You're running your house because it's yours. It's
I don't
not
think
your
men are
wife's.
raised at all to learn how to
Yeah, there's a problem with the way we raise men.
Yeah, it's the way we raise men.
And
Absolutely, yes.
And I'll tell you, so my partner is, does a lot of chores at home. And the reason I married him is because back then we used to call it equal rights, right? I believe in equal rights. Of course, it's the same thing. So I married him, and he belongs to a different community. I married him because he believed in equal rights. So when people come to my house and they see him, for example, if I'm hosting a dinner, then I will cook, and my partner will lay the table and clear up. I have women guests who come, who rush into the kitchen to help him because they're so embarrassed to see a man helping. I mean, to see a man doing.
Sorry, but Poornima, this is...
It's hilarious. And then when I have guests coming to my house to stay over, he's in charge of the toiletries and the bedding. So he will decide who sleeps where. He will roll out the bed for them, give them their towels. And I'll tell you, women are so, these are my own friends. And this is a shout out to all my friends. Stop appreciating my partner for doing the bare minimum.
Yes.
Really, we have to stop appreciating
God, I
them.
can go on and on, Poornima. I had written an article about how, a man taking a child in a park, on a stroller, everybody will think, oh my God, he's such a nice guy.
Really.
And the mother will be taking the child every day on the stroller. I don't think anybody's going to say, what a nice mother. And you're so right when you say that, this is so deep-seated in all of us, in this entire role that we've just passed on, to both the genders, and that's how the whole society's been playing all along.
And the word babysitting, have you heard that? Babysitting.
Yes, I have.
I'm babysitting my child, or my husband will babysit. Why are you babysitting? Do you know the meaning of the word babysitting? Babysitting is when someone else looks after your child. Are you babysitting your child when you're actually taking care of your child? Is a mother babysitting her child? No. But a father is babysitting the child. Really?
Yes. I so agree with you. But we have a long way ahead before all these things can ever, probably, I don't know if I'll live that long. I always say this to all the young people I work with. And, it's a dialogue that can go on and on, Poornima. But more than anything else, I need to say thank you for coming on today's episode. And it is a pleasure. And I know that once you and me meet, you are in Chennai.
I know.
In a city away, from Bangalore in India. And I have a lot of listeners from the UK and the US. So for them to understand that you are a little far away from me. Yeah. But when we meet, I know that this is going to be a house on fire because we have so much in common to discuss.
Right.
And before I end the episode, I will say that my question remains, should we follow something that is so dated and outrageously divisive in nature, like the caste system? Should we really follow that? And shouldn't we start opening up to this new dialogue about feminism, the place of women and men, and people who are going through this youngsters who are really talking about gender fluidity, that we need to open up our eyes and learn that the world is changing and we might as well just buck up and move on with the new world order. Thank you so much, Poornima. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Can I just end with just one, with just about 20 seconds of something that I wrote that I want to share?
Please, I would love to hear that.
Thanks. Because I got so tired of explaining what feminists do, and because I'm called a feminazi for some reason.
I've been called that too.
Yeah, feminazi, because people don't even understand what the Nazis did. So I created a manifesto, and I've put it on my bio in Clubhouse and a few other places, so people really know what feminists do. So I'll just read that out to you. It's about 4 lines.
Please do.
Feminists fight for gender equality. Feminists fight against patriarchy. Feminists fight for men who are victims of toxic masculinity. Feminists fight against rape of all genders. Feminists fight for mental health. Feminists fight against regressive social stereotypes, and feminists fight against discrimination and oppression of all communities, castes, and minorities. If you ridicule feminists, please know that you're on the side of all oppression and repression, including those of men. So that's my
On
closing.
that note, thank you so much. This I will borrow from you to put it up on my social media feed because it has touched my heart. It gives me the goosebumps when I listen to you. Thank you so much, Poornima.
Thank you, Mohua. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity. It was so fun talking to you.
Thank you. To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services. Find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course, all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are MoodyMo Awaaz Podcast, where Hatke is hot.